Level 1. The Recruit. You're 18 years old and you weigh 68 kilograms with your boots on. You signed the papers at a recruiting office that smelled like carpet cleaner and old coffee. The same office where your cousin signed his papers 3 years earlier before he shipped out and came back different. Quieter, in a way nobody in your family talks about directly. Your recruiter asked what you wanted to do in the Army. You said infantry, maybe ranger, maybe something else, something further. He didn't laugh, but you saw the look. Everyone says that. He's heard it 1,000 times from kids who quit at the first hard week. You go home that night and don't tell your friends what you signed up for. You're not sure yet if you'll actually go through with it, and admitting it out loud makes it too real too fast. Basic training is at Fort Benning, Georgia. 10 weeks. You run before the sun is up, boots striking pavement in a rhythm that stops feeling like effort somewhere around week 4 and starts feeling like breathing. You low crawl through mud with a rifle you don't fully trust yet. Mud in your ears, mud in places mud shouldn't be able to reach. You get yelled at for things that seem small and matter enormously. Your bed has to be made a specific way. Your boots have to be laced a specific way. Your locker has to be arranged a specific way. And if it isn't, a drill sergeant flips it onto the floor without warning and tells you to do it again. You learn that discipline isn't about the bed. It's about whether you'll do the small thing correctly when nobody's checking. You qualify expert on the range on your second try. The first try, you flinch on every shot, your whole body bracing for a recoil that isn't as bad as your body thinks it will be. Your drill sergeant tells you flinching means you're anticipating the recoil instead of trusting the process, that the rifle will do what it does, whether you brace for it or not, and bracing only throws off your aim. You stop anticipating. The rounds start landing where you aim them. First the center mass targets, then the smaller ones further out. Graduation day, your family drives 4 hours to watch you march in formation with 200 other new soldiers who all look identical from a distance and nothing alike up close. Your mother cries. Your father shakes your hand instead of hugging you, which is its own kind of pride, the kind that doesn't know how to say what it means, so it uses a handshake instead. You're a soldier now. Technically, you know almost nothing, but you know that. Level 2, the Ranger. You volunteer for the 75th Ranger Regiment before you've even finished your advanced individual training because staying in a regular unit feels like settling for something you haven't tried to earn yet. Ranger assessment and selection comes first. RASP. 3 weeks that exist to find out what you do when your body wants to quit and your mind hasn't decided yet. You run with a rucksack that weighs 35 kilograms, straps cutting into your shoulders in a way that becomes background noise after enough hours. Your feet blister, the blisters pop. You keep walking because stopping to address them costs more time than the pain costs you in discomfort. An instructor watches you fall behind on a road march and doesn't say anything. He just watches, clipboard against his hip, expression unreadable. That silence is worse than yelling. You catch up. You don't know how. Something in you refuses the alternative of finishing behind the standard, even when your legs have stopped sending useful signals to your brain. 40% of your class doesn't make it through. Some quit out loud, dropping their gear at a designated spot with a word that ends everything instantly. Some get injured, stress fractures that show up on an X-ray a week later after they've been walking on them without telling anyone. Some just disappear one morning, gone before breakfast, bunks stripped bare, and nobody mentions them anymore because mentioning them feels like it might be contagious. You make it. You get assigned to a battalion at Fort Benning, one of 3 in the regiment, and you spend the first months learning that being a ranger isn't a finish line. It's a new starting point with a higher floor. Your first deployment is 9 months later, and it isn't what you imagined at 18 watching movies in your bedroom with the volume low so your parents wouldn't hear the gunfire through the wall. Most of it is preparation, rehearsal, mission planning that goes over the same details 40 times until they're automatic. Sand tables built in a tent showing the layout of a target you'll only see for real once, in the dark, moving fast. When the actual operation happens, it lasts 11 minutes. You clear a compound with your team, room by room, exactly the way you rehearsed it 400 times. Muscle memory doing the work your conscious mind is too flooded with adrenaline to manage cleanly. Nobody on your side gets hurt. You fly back to the outpost and someone hands you an MRE, and you eat it in silence because there's nothing to say yet. That comes later, if it comes at all. usually in fragments, years apart, to people who were there and already understand without you finishing the sentence.
Level 3. The Green Beret Candidate. 4 years in, and you apply for Special Forces selection, a decision you make quietly over several months rather than all at once, the way big decisions actually happen, despite how movies show them happening in a single dramatic moment. Everyone tells you the Q course is different from anything you've done. They're right, though nobody can explain exactly how until you're living it. Selection alone is 24 days at Camp Mackall, North Carolina, a stretch of pine forest and swamp that's been breaking down and rebuilding soldiers since before your father was born. Land navigation at night, with a map, a compass, and no GPS. Ruck marches with no set distance announced so you can't pace yourself against an ending you don't know exists. You navigate to a point in the dark, alone, using terrain association skills you didn't know you'd retained from a classroom lecture months earlier, and you get there 4 minutes past the standard. You don't know if that's a fail until the board tells you 3 weeks later it wasn't, that the standard has margin built in that nobody advertises, because advertising it would defeat the purpose of testing whether you'll quit under uncertainty. The Q course itself runs over a year depending on your specialty. You choose Weapons Sergeant, drawn to it because your grandfather kept old rifles he never fully explained, and you'd always wanted to understand mechanisms the way he seemed to. You learn foreign small arms, foreign doctrine, how to teach a skill to someone who doesn't speak your language using demonstration instead of words, breaking a complex task into physical steps that translate without translation. Language school comes next. 6 months of a language you'd never studied. Immersion until you're dreaming in it badly. Ordering food in your sleep in a language you can barely order food in while awake. You earn the Green Beret at 23, the wool cap heavier in meaning than it is in weight. Your father, the one who shook your hand instead of hugging you at Benning, hugs you this time, and neither of you mentions that it's different. You both just let it be different. Level 4, the Operator Candidate. 8 years in, a senior NCO you respect asks if you've thought about Delta, phrasing it casually over coffee like he's asking about weekend plans, though you both know the question isn't casual at all. You have, quietly, for years, the way you don't say certain things out loud, because saying them makes the disappointment louder if it doesn't happen. Assessment and Selection, the actual name almost nobody outside the unit says correctly, runs for weeks at Fort Bragg and in the mountains and forests around it, a landscape that by now feels like it knows you personally after everything it's put you through since Ranger selection. Land navigation again, but the standards are unstated on purpose, deliberately withheld so that the pressure comes from uncertainty rather than a countdown clock. Nobody tells you the time limit. Nobody tells you the distance. You walk for hours carrying weight you stopped feeling as weight 3 days ago. It's just part of your body now, an extension you no longer negotiate with. Psychological evaluation follows. Hours of questions designed to find cracks under stress rather than cracks under comfort, because comfort never breaks anyone in this line of work. Board interviews come after, where men who've spent decades in this world ask you questions with no correct answer, only honest ones, watching less for what you say and more for whether you flinch from saying it. You find out you made it the way everyone finds out. A quiet conversation in a hallway. No ceremony, no announcement, just a handshake and a sentence that changes everything without sounding like it should. Operator training course comes next. Roughly 6 months. Marksmanship beyond anything you've done. Close quarters battle in shoot houses built to bleed the hesitation out of you round by round, room by room, until entering a doorway under fire feels like just another Tuesday. Driving courses teach you to control a vehicle at speeds and in conditions that would total most cars in civilian hands. Breaching training teaches you the physics of doors, walls, and the explosives or tools that defeat them. Medical training goes deep enough that you could keep a teammate alive on a table if it came to that. Tourniquets and chest seals practiced until your hands move faster than your thoughts. You fire more rounds in 1 week than you fired in your first 2 years combined. Your grouping tightens until it stops being a skill you think about and becomes something your body just does. The rifle an extension rather than a tool. Level 5. The Operator. You're assigned to a squadron. The unit doesn't wear uniforms that announce anything, doesn't have a recruiting poster, doesn't have a name most people outside a narrow circle would recognize correctly even if they heard it. The men around you have combat experience that would make headlines if any of it were public, and none of it is, and none of them seem bothered by that, because recognition was never the point for the ones who made it this far. Your first mission with the squadron is a night operation you can't detail to anyone, not your family, not your closest friend from Ranger Battalion, nobody outside the small circle who was there and already knows without you saying it. You do the job, you come home, you sit in a debrief that goes over every decision with a precision that borders on uncomfortable, every second between the front door and the objective picked apart by men who weren't in the room but understand exactly what should have happened in it. That precision is the point. Mistakes here don't cost inconvenience, they cost lives, yours and the people relying on you, and the unit treats every debrief like the mistake already happened even when it didn't, because the next one might. You develop a specialty within the team, something beyond your original job title, sniper-capable marksmanship, breaching expertise, communications, something that makes you the person the team leader calls on first for a specific problem, and over time, your name becomes attached to that specialty the way a surgeon's name becomes attached to a particular procedure. The work is 95% preparation and rehearsal, and 5% action, and the 5% only goes well because of the 95, a ratio nobody outside understands and nobody inside questions. Level 7. The Team Leader. 14 years in, you're leading a small element now, 4 or 5 operators, planning missions instead of only executing them, and the shift is larger than the title suggests. The responsibility shifts from your own performance to the outcome for everyone under your call sign. It's not about whether you personally do the job well anymore. It's about whether the plan you built gets everyone home, a weight that sits differently in your chest than any physical exhaustion ever did. You brief a mission and a junior operator asks a question that exposes a hole in your plan you hadn't seen, a contingency you'd assumed away because assuming it away made the plan simpler. You don't get defensive. You fix the plan on the spot, in front of the team, because ego here costs more than embarrassment. It costs lives. That's the job now, being wrong quickly and correcting it before it matters, treating your own certainty as a hypothesis rather than a conclusion. You lose someone on a deployment, not on your team, but in the unit, someone you trained with years earlier at OTC, someone whose grouping you remember tightening the same way yours did. You attend the ceremony. You don't talk about it much afterwards. That's not avoidance. It's how people in this world carry weight without letting it become the only thing they carry, storing it somewhere accessible but not load-bearing. Level 7. The Senior Operator. 19 years in, you're one of the men junior operators watch to understand what right looks like, not because you tell them to watch, but because that's what happens to anyone who lasts this long without cutting corners. You've deployed more times than you've counted precisely because counting stopped mattering somewhere around year 12, when the deployments blurred into a single continuous stretch broken only by brief, disorienting returns home. You train the newest candidates coming through OTC now, some of them younger than you were at your first RASP formation, watching them make the exact mistakes you made at their age with an almost eerie precision, like the mistakes belong to the course itself rather than the individual making them. You watch one of them navigate the dark land nav points you once failed by 4 minutes, and you say nothing, the same silence your old instructor gave you at Mackle, because some lessons only work if the person feels them alone first, without a shortcut to the understanding.
Your body carries the record of the work. Knees rebuilt from years of parachute landings and hard falls in shoot houses. A shoulder that aches before weather changes. A barometer nobody asked for. Hearing that isn't what it was, thinned out by 2 decades of controlled explosions and suppressed but not silent gunfire. None of it shows on paper. All of it is real, and you stop mentioning it because mentioning it invites a conversation you don't want to have about what it cost. Level 8. The Senior Enlisted Advisor. 24 years in, you're a command sergeant major now, advising officers above you and shaping the unit's standards from a position that isn't about shooting anymore. Though you still qualify expert every cycle loud out of habit and something closer to identity. You sit in planning rooms with people who make decisions that reach the level of national policy, generals and civilians whose names appear in newspapers you don't read anymore, because the version of events in them rarely matches the version you lived. Your job in those rooms is to make sure the standard, the actual standard, the one built over decades by people who bled to establish it, doesn't erode under pressure to move faster or cut corners for the sake of a timeline someone above you invented without understanding what it costs on the ground. You say no to things that would look fine on paper and get someone killed in practice, and you say it in rooms where saying no isn't comfortable and isn't always welcomed. Saying no here requires more courage than most of the missions you ran at 25, because there's no adrenaline to carry you through it, just a quiet certainty that you're right, and the discomfort of being the only person willing to say so out loud. Level 9. The Quiet Years. You retire at 46 after 28 years, most of them invisible to anyone who didn't serve beside you. A career that from the outside looks like a series of blank spaces between a few things people can verify, a school here, a unit assignment there, and nothing in between that anyone can confirm. There's no public ceremony that explains what you did, because most of it still can't be explained. Not to your extended family, not to old friends from high school who ask polite questions at reunions and accept vague answers because they sense the vagueness isn't rudeness, it's necessity. You move to a small town, not far from Fort Bragg, close enough that old teammates still stop by unannounced the way they always did, treating your kitchen table the way they once treated a staging area. You consult occasionally, train a few people privately, mostly stay quiet, letting the years of noise settle into something closer to stillness. You wake up early out of habit, not orders. Your body's still running on a schedule and nobody's enforcing anymore. You still check exits in restaurants. You still notice things most people don't. A car parked wrong. A person standing still too long near a doorway. A hand kept in a pocket a beat longer than comfortable. You'll never fully turn that off, and you've stopped trying to, understanding by now that it isn't a switch, it's the shape your attention took after 28 years of needing it that way. And somewhere right now, an 18-year-old is standing in a recruiting office that smells like carpet cleaner, signing papers, telling a recruiter he wants to be a ranger, maybe something further, not knowing yet what further actually costs, or what it gives back in exchange. He'll find out, slowly, one selection and one deployment at a time. Most don't make it all the way. A few will. They'll learn what you learned. The weight of the rucksack that stops feeling like weight. The silence that's worse than yelling. The standard that doesn't announce itself so you learn to hold it whether anyone's watching or not. And some of them, if they're lucky and stubborn in the right proportions, will learn what you never got the chance to.